The story begins with a young boy who finds solace in nightly conversations with a mysterious person over the radio, a figure who serves as his emotional support. Years later, at the start of the semester at Furin Academy, a teacher introduces himself to the class. In a moment of nervousness, the teacher bites his tongue but continues, explaining that the formerly all-girls school has decided to become co-ed this year. He warns the female students that the transition might be difficult but asks them to adapt. Everything seems to be proceeding normally until a male student suddenly stands up and interrupts, criticizing the teacher for biting his tongue. He argues that such a mistake makes the speech imperfect and necessitates an immediate restart. When the flustered teacher asks for his identity, the boy introduces himself to the entire class as Arisu Yamabuki, the heir to the Yamabuki group. He declares his mission to lead Japan into the future, a goal that requires absolute perfection. He oddly adds that his favorite fruit is the peach and claims to possess a great aura, though he insists he is also charming. However, he announces that he is not yet 100% perfect and requires the girl's assistance to bridge the final gap. To everyone's shock, he asks the female students to line up and whisper, "I love you," into his ear. 3 hours later, the male students confront Yamabuki, complaining that his stunt has caused the girls to look at all the boys with suspicion. Undeterred, Yamabuki asserts that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. A young lady then approaches him, noting his wealthy family background, and asks if his request was a method of seeking a girlfriend, offering herself as a candidate. Yamabuki stands and approaches her closely, only to analyze her voice. He politely rejects her, stating her voice lacks power, and excuses himself to go to the bathroom. He claims to be so perfect that his bodily functions operate on a strict schedule. While the other students are baffled by his eccentric personality, his friends from a previous school explain the truth. Yamabuki has been searching for a specific person since his second year of high school. He does not know what she looks like, so he relies entirely on his hearing to identify her voice. As Yamabuki prepares to use the restroom, he receives a message from his mother, which triggers a memory of his high school days. His only joy had been a radio program hosted by a girl named Apollo titled Mayonnaise Hearten. The show, which consisted of her talking about her daily school life, had very few listeners, but Yamabuki found strength in her broadcasts. She always ended the show by saying that doing the program gave her the strength to continue. Lost in thought, he is suddenly approached by a girl who whispers that she loves him. He initially dismisses it, focused on his schedule, but then pauses. The voice sounds remarkably similar to Apollo's. However, caught off guard and needing to relieve himself, he runs to the bathroom, leaving the identity of the girl unconfirmed. During lunch, the Radio Fusion Club begins its broadcast. The audio quality is terrible, marred by distortion from cheap microphones, but Yamabuki realizes the voice speaking sounds exactly like the one he is searching for. He recalls that Apollo stopped broadcasting at the end of his first year of high school and deleted her archives. However, based on the information he had gathered that she was his age and wanted to attend a girls' school with a sea view, he had calculated that she would likely be at Furin Academy. This deduction was the primary reason he enrolled the moment the school went co-ed. He stands before the broadcasting room door, feeling that he is a mere 1% away from completion. When he opens the door, he finds 4 different girls inside. He tries to speak, but one of them angrily reprimands him for entering without permission. Because the microphones are live, the entire school hears the altercation, with some students recognizing him as the boy who nearly defecated in the hallway. Yamabuki apologizes but focuses intently on the girls' voices. The problem is that they all share similarities with Apollo. The girl with black hair shares her intonation. The one with braids sounds like Apollo did when calm. The pink-haired girl sounds like Apollo when angry. And the white-haired girl whispers just like Apollo did when hiding from her parents. It has been 3 years, and his memory is hazy, leaving him insecure. The girls, assuming he wants to join the industry, explain their diverse goals. The white-haired girl wants to be a VTuber, the black-haired girl a presenter, the one with braids a singer, and the pink-haired girl a voice actress. However, they quickly distance themselves from him due to his earlier "I love you" stunt, which had been so distorted by rumors that some believe he wanted a lover to bear his children. The pink-haired girl calls him a degenerate and demands he leave. Yamabuki attempts to explain that he came to find someone, swearing on his family name that he has no hidden intentions other than to hear a specific voice. He asks if any of them is Apollo, but they look at him with confusion, as if he were talking about a brand of fried chicken. One girl tells him to leave, noting that only club members are allowed inside. Thinking quickly, Yamabuki declares himself an expert in voice work and points out the club's critical flaw: their equipment is terrible. He proposes that if they let him join, he will provide new, professional-grade equipment, revealing he recently made 1 million yen through an investment fund. Enticed by the offer, the black-haired girl and the aspiring VTuber agree, and even the girl with braids admits his voice is pleasant. Yamabuki boldly declares he will become the club president and take them to the top. The pink-haired girl objects, noting the current president is rich, but the others are already considering what to give him in return. They decide on a prank. They make Yamabuki turn around, stand behind him, and simultaneously whisper, "I love you." The combined sound strikes a chord in him, sounding exactly like Apollo's full voice. Flustered, he uses the excuse of needing to eat and flees. Alone, Yamabuki reflects on his true motivation. He remembers Apollo with affection, specifically a moment when he broke character and messaged her that he loved her too and wished her good night. As an adult, he is deeply embarrassed by this memory. Confessing to a stranger over the radio feels like the only mistake of his life. He wants to find her not just to reconnect, but to access her files and delete the evidence of his confession to prevent any future extortion against the Yamabuki group. Yamabuki is eventually welcomed into the broadcasting group, though he is treated as a glorified errand boy and nicknamed Buki. Despite the pink-haired girl's hostility and the toys they pile on him, he remains focused on observing them to identify Apollo. The next day, he encounters Uzuki, the beautiful student council vice president. While she records announcements, Yamabuki notes that she is a model student and highly popular. However, he critiques her performance. While her voice is like a silver bell, she stumbles over words and lacks technical skill. He scolds her for her errors, but her classmates defend her, finding her clumsiness charming, a concept of imperfection that Yamabuki fails to understand. He tentatively rules her out as Apollo. He then meets Nene, the pink-haired girl, who is asked to read lines from a manga that Apollo also loved. Nene is a star in class and an aspiring voice actress, but she too suffers from pronunciation issues. When she catches Yamabuki observing her, she loudly accuses him of being a stalker and a pervert to her friends. Yamabuki realizes that hearing a voice through a phone filter is different from reality. Complicating his search, he decides he must observe them more closely. His notes are eventually read by Kirino, the aspiring VTuber. Kirino is clumsy and partially blind to her surroundings, accidentally passing gas near him and falling down the stairs. When he tries to speak to her, she claims she is in the middle of a live stream. Yamabuki interrupts the stream to greet the audience and then leaves, unimpressed by her lack of professionalism. He grows frustrated, remembering how Apollo passionately dreamed of using her voice for a career, a dream he had promised to support by learning everything about the industry. He feels these girls are not taking that dream seriously. Later, during another disaster of a broadcast where Uzuki makes repeated mistakes, Yamabuki snaps. He storms the broadcasting room, shouting into the microphone that the club is a disaster. He tells the entire school that they will never progress if they continue to treat the girls like princesses rather than professionals. He declares that regardless of whether Apollo has forgotten their promise, he has not. He announces that he will guide the Radio Fusion members to perfection, whether they want to be presenters, VTubers, singers, or voice actresses, demanding an answer to his dedication. The girls kick him out of the room immediately. As he stands outside, dejected, he receives a notification. Apollo has started a transmission. Inside the room he just left, the voice comes to life. Apollo speaks to her listeners, admitting her heart nearly stopped because she never thought anyone would try to find her. She apologizes for hiding her identity. She reveals that although she complained about having few listeners in the past, she was truly happy just to have Yamabuki by her side. She confesses that the "I love you" she whispered earlier wasn't a prank or for the general audience, it was meant solely and exclusively for him. As the girls continue their broadcast late into the evening, laughter and confident chatter spilling freely from the club room, Arisu remained standing quietly outside the door. He hadn't meant to linger this long. At first, he told himself he was only passing by, that he was simply curious, but the longer he listened, the more difficult it became to leave. Their voices sounded different when they weren't aware of being watched, more relaxed, more genuine. Among them, one voice in particular tugged at something deep in his chest. Arisu checked his phone, and almost on cue, a message from Apollo appeared on the screen. The brief confirmation was enough to solidify what his instincts had already pieced together. One of the girls inside that room was a member of the broadcasting club. His fingers tightened around the device. For a moment, he considered opening the door and confronting them directly, demanding answers, but he stopped himself. That wasn't how he wanted this to unfold. Turning away from the club room, Arisu exhaled slowly. If fate had brought him this close, then he would respect it. He would find her properly, and when he did, he would fulfill the promise he had once made, no matter what it took. The following morning, before the sun had fully risen, Arisu gathered the girls at the beach. complaints erupted immediately. Sand clung to their shoes, the air was cold, and no one looked even remotely awake. Ignoring the groans, Arisu explained that running was excellent vocal training, strengthening lung capacity and breath control. Though unconvinced, the girls followed him along the shoreline, their voices gradually giving way to steady breathing. Midway through the jog, Shinobu suddenly burst into laughter and pointed skyward. A seagull soared overhead with an earbud caught in its beak. Arisu's eyes widened as he recognized it instantly. It was his. Without hesitation, he pivoted and began sprinting backward, chasing the bird with startling speed. The girls froze, watching in disbelief as he closed the distance while running in reverse. When he finally returned, earbuds secured, they were bent over gasping for air. Arisu, on the other hand, wasn't even sweating. Nene snapped at him afterward, accusing him of treating them like athletes instead of idols. Calmly removing his sunglasses, Arisu replied that he was simply the perfect person to turn them into professionals. Nene bristled, ready to argue, but Shinobu interrupted, admitting they had been slacking off lately. Since they had already discussed exercising together, she reasoned this training wasn't such a bad idea. Reika stepped forward then, her expression serious. She asked Arisu directly if they could trust him with their future. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her carefully, as if weighing the meaning behind her words. When he finally spoke, he said he was completely serious about wanting all of them to succeed. Nene demanded proof, and Arisu agreed, though he suggested they get breakfast first. The mood shifted instantly. The girls stiffened and attempted to retreat toward the clubroom. When Arisu asked why they were running, Nene snapped that they were sweaty and needed to change. Later, they met at a diner. Plates clinked softly as Arisu handed each girl a notebook. Inside were pages upon pages of detailed notes outlining their weaknesses, habits, and tailored improvement plans. He explained that every goal had been customized to suit their individual potential. The girls were stunned by the effort alone. Nene, however, stared in horror at the towering list of reading exercises assigned to her. As they flipped through the pages, they noticed something else. Each plan contained clear, concrete goals tied directly to their dreams. Reika froze when she saw her requirement, selling 50 CDs during a live performance. Arisu explained proudly that confidence couldn't be taught through theory alone. It had to be earned. Silence followed until Reika asked if Arisu had ever played an instrument. When he admitted he hadn't, she pointed out that performing live required courage he couldn't possibly understand. Arisu insisted she follow the plan regardless. Live performance, he argued, was something she would have to face eventually. When she asked if he had ever been nervous, he answered instantly that nervousness wasn't a trait found in his family. Reika stood up slowly, cupped his face, and calmly called him a liar. To her, he was all words and no experience. She saw no reason to follow advice from someone who had never stood on stage. Without another word, she left the diner. Nene explained bluntly that Arisu had crossed a line. Reika was talented enough to write her own music, and being lectured by someone without first-hand experience felt insulting. As the girls continued talking, they suddenly realized Arisu was gone. In truth, he was crouched beneath the table, his shoulders tense. Rika's words echoed painfully. After a moment, he let out a quiet laugh and pulled himself upright. If he wanted her to believe in him, then words weren't enough. He needed to hear her perform. The following Wednesday, Arisu went to the school courtyard after hearing rumors of Rika's weekly mini-concerts. A crowd of female fans had already gathered. When they spotted him, they immediately told him to leave. He tried explaining that he was a clubmate, but no one listened. Before the situation escalated, Reika stepped forward and admitted to the crowd that she was nervous. Arisu froze. It was the exact phrase Apollo used before singing. As Reika began her original song, the world seemed to fade away. Memories flooded back, nights spent listening to Apollo's streams, moments that had once brought him peace. By the time Reika finished, the resemblance felt undeniable. After announcing one final song request, Reika glanced at her backpack full of original compositions, then briefly at Arisu. She didn't want him to hear them. When the concert ended, she approached him and teasingly asked if his heart belonged to her. Arisu agreed instantly, apologizing for doubting her. Her expression hardened. She told him she didn't need his approval and walked away. Days passed without Arisu appearing. Reika felt uneasy. Hearing a commotion in the courtyard, she rushed over to find him surrounded by girls complaining loudly. Arisu explained he was performing to prove her wrong. Her gaze fell on his bandaged hand. Acting on impulse, she apologized to the crowd and announced the performance would be a duet. She stepped beside him, telling him to play whatever he wanted. Afterward, she teased him about finally feeling nervous. He denied it stubbornly. Smirking, She pressed her ear to his chest, catching him completely off guard. His racing heart betrayed him. On another day, Nene left the clubroom early. Suspecting trouble, Arisu followed her to an empty classroom where he overheard her reading a romance manga aloud. Her voice was soft but awkward. He bluntly told her her acting was terrible. Embarrassed, she revealed knightly love and passionately described its forbidden romance. Arisu noticed an audition notice on the cover. When she insisted on practicing alone, Arisu refused, embarrassing himself deliberately to match her vulnerability. Eventually, she admitted she wanted to audition but had no relationship experience. Without warning, Arisu knelt and asked her to be his girlfriend, only to reveal it was acting practice. After fierce resistance, she agreed to a 3-week fake relationship. Their public act shocked the school. Though they argued constantly, Shinobu believed it meant genuine closeness. On the final day, alone together, Nene prepared herself for the kissing scene, but Arisu refused, telling her she should only kiss someone she truly loved. She failed the audition. When Arisu fainted in despair, she kissed the book, hiding his face. When he confronted her afterward, she flipped him over her shoulder, screaming that she hated him. Shinobu later reassured him Nene's red ears told the real story.